Level of detail. In Tableau Prep, when it was released a while ago, a lot of Tableau desktop users, they dived into it and they noticed that the typical calculations like a level of detail calculation or table calculations, they were not possible to use or implement in all of your different flows. As of 2020.1, this finally changed and we can use our level of details finally in our own flows. Let's take a look if we try to create this ourselves. By opening Tableau Prep, I can use some data, of course, to make it on topic a bit. I've searched for some COVID-19 data. Let's take a look if we drag it in there. For the ones who don't know Tableau Prep and also only know Tableau Desktop or Tableau Server, Tableau Prep is the visual way of making sure your data is ready to be analyzed or visualized in Tableau. Think of an ETL tool, but then in a visual way to make it clear for everyone, not only the pure data workers, but everyone that comes in contact with data to make it possible to really prepare or clean up your data. That's why Tableau came up with Tableau Prep. I've connected to my Corona or COVID-19 dataset. Let's take a look what's in there. Let's clean up the name first. Okay. When you drag in your table, of course, you see all of the different columns you have available. That's not super important at this point. Let's take a look at a first step. This first clean step will give me a proper overview of all of my different columns, what's in it, and how the different data is distributed. I see I have a date, I have a day, month, year. This is the same data that you, of course, see in the whole data column as well. We see the number of cases. Unfortunately, the number of people that passed away thanks to COVID-19. We have the countries. Then we have sort of abbreviation of different countries. I don't need those, so I'm going to remove them. I also have the country territory code. Let's also remove that one. And then the population data of 2018. That could be quite interesting, but I want to have some more updated data. So that's why I also downloaded the total population per country dataset. This is the second dataset that I'm going to drag into Tableau Prep. Population. Okay, so I see I have some more population data in here that is more extensive, I presume. So let's take a look. Okay, so I even have data until 2045. They also try to predict how we're going to grow in the future if we look at the population. So that's more complete data that we have than the data we have in our COVID-19 data set. So that's why I'm also going to remove my population data too. That only leaves me with the countries, the two measures, in this case, cases and deaths, and some date information available. As you can see in this data set, we are looking at the day level. So per day, there are new cases and new number of deaths available in my data set. But of course, I just removed my population data. So I would like to get my population data from this data set. And as you can see, maybe some small explanation is necessary here as well. Every line equals the population of 1 year. But here you also see the column called mid-period. I've checked the explanation of the data, and this is always for the month of June. May, my apologies. So we always have the mid-period, so it's always a prediction for the month of May. So this column is also quite similar to this column, but we'll see later how we're going to clean that up. The main idea here is that you understand that this data set is looking at a year level. So every single row in my data set is a year, while in this data set, every single row is a day. And that's an issue because we no longer can join them at this moment. Otherwise, we would cause some row duplication. So we first have to make sure that the levels of the data are the same. Of course, there's a downside, because if I aggregate all of my data of my COVID-19 data set, I will lose a lot of insights. So I also want to check some data at the level of the week instead of only on the year. But if I aggregate everything, I will lose that. That's where the level of detail calculations will become useful. Think of it, we are going to look at the year level, but our level of detail calculation will still be smart enough to remember what happened on the week level. That's the whole idea behind this. So let's call this first step remove, because I removed certain columns. You can use as many steps as you want, but you can also do this in this one step as well. I prefer using multiple steps to make it clear for everyone what we are doing. Add. First of all, I want to do something on the week level. So I'm going to create a calculate field that makes sure I get the week by using a date part that gets the week out of my date called date rep. Okay, let's take a look. Save. My week is available. Let's put it between day and month. And you can see in the little data grid at the bottom that we have our new calculate field available to be used in our different calculations. Okay, so I want to make sure that I can store or save or keep the data of the week level. That's why I'm going to create my first calculate field, a level of detail calculation, I mean, looking at cases. There are two ways of creating this level of detail calculation. The first one is a more visual way. That's by clicking on one of your measures, go to the three dotted image and go for create calculate field and select fixed LOD. From the moment I click on this fixed LOD option, you'll get a sort of visual interface to choose by grouping. Think of your fixed clauses and which aggregation you want to use for your fixed level of detail calculation. I don't prefer doing it this way because I'm used to creating level of detail calculations in Tableau Desktop, which is more in a calculated field way. So let's go for that one by just removing this level of detail. So the first way is by clicking on three dots, create calculate field and choose fixed level of detail. Of course, we can also create our own calculate field that says weekly cases. I want to make sure Tableau Prep always looks at the country in combination with the week and then gives me the total number of cases. That's what this calculation says. So only look at the countries and the weeks. And if you find a combination that's unique between these two, then summarize all of the cases that you find in my data set. Okay. Weekly cases, let me drag it to the right side. Weekly cases, we can now see, of course, Afghanistan. If we look at the week 17 of Afghanistan, we of course see we only have one row. So that's why the weekly cases will be the same as the row level. If we scroll down a bit, we'll see on week 16, of course, we have more rows. It's just going to add all of these separate cases to this weekly cases field that we just created. We're going to do something similar with our deaths measure by creating a new calculate field. It will look quite similar. Deaths. We're going to fix on our countries, again on our week. Also here, we would like to get the weekly overview of different deaths. Okay, let's drag it to the right a little bit. Great, so now I have weekly data, I have daily data, and I still have my countries and territories. Good. Now it's time to change the aggregation of our data set by adding a different step. I want to keep having my different countries. I would like to see all of my cases. I would like to see all of my deaths. I would like to see my weekly cases, but I don't want to summarize them. I would like to take an average to know what's the average amount of cases that we get per week. The same for my deaths. For the average amount of people passing away due to Corona on a weekly basis. That's what we're taking a look at right now. Okay, I'm also going to take the year because I can see I have multiple years in there as well. So I'm not going to take my row level date anymore. My days are no longer useful. My weeks and months are also no longer being used. Let's take a look. If I go to my next clean step, let's switch them around. Okay. Cases, that's weekly, that's weekly cases. Swapping them in the wrong order, no problem. And going back to year. Okay, it looks like this. So, okay, in total, in Algeria, for example, in 2020, we had 2,500 cases, 367 deaths. On average, on a weekly basis, 24 people passed away. And on average, on a weekly basis, 161 people were getting sick thanks to COVID-19. So these weekly deaths and these weekly cases, we couldn't get there easily without the level of detail calculation. There is a workaround that we could have used before, of course. That's by making multiple flows, changing the aggregation, and then rejoining to that same data again. That was just too difficult and took too much time to get to the same simple result that we're getting right here. Let's try to wrap up by making sure that we can join in our total population data. I have a location ID, it seems. This is only useful if I'm using the same data sets of that same website that I want to join with. It's not the case right now, so let's remove that one. I also don't need the ID. Time is a year, that's good. Then I have the mid period. Remove that one because it only focuses on 1 month. It's always the same year, so that's okay. Population male and population female. I only want the total population, so I'm going to remove that one as well. And the population density. Okay. As you can see, we always have multiple rows for, I see someone is adding something in the chat. I'll try to focus on the chat and the Q&A later on to make sure we can go through our flow in a proper way. So as you can see, if I go, for example, for Belgium, of course, we have medium, we have constant mortality, we have constant fertility, we have medium, we have these different variants. But if we look at 1 year, for example, 2020, we always have the same population total for all of them, for Denmark in these cases. So that means that in essence, the variant that we're using right now, this column is no longer really useful for us. So let's just aggregate let's first of all, make sure we only filter our years. Let's start with that one. Filter, selected values. My other data set only contained 2019 and 2020. So let's start by only keeping the same ones here. Okay, done. This means, okay, then I only want to have the years, the total, and the location. So let's aggregate. And because he always has the same rows with the same number of population total, I can basically do location here, time here, and just take the min or the max of my population total because it will always be the same to get to the correct result per different country. If I double check my clean step, if I go to Belgium, for example, I can see about 12 million, that looks correct. So I now have my total population per year of the different years that I have available in my data set here. Final check. Check. One last thing that I need to do is joining these two together to make sure that we have here countries and territories, here location. Let's also join them on the year that we have available on the left and the right side. To make sure that we have, if I sometimes delay a bit, that's because I'm watching the chat as well to see if there are questions on this immediately. Okay, nothing that I can solve at this moment. Okay, so on the left side, we can see that we had to use our countries to join them together. Year and time also have to link up to get to our final result. Countries and territories, let's rename this one to countries. I see my years, my cases, weekly cases. I have the same countries on the right side again. So let's remove that one. I have my time one, remove that one to get to the population total. Okay, let's take a look. This is the first example of what's now possible within Prep. Thanks to the row level, thanks to the level of detail calculation that's finally available, it's easier to get to this step faster. It was possible before, but it was made more difficult. So by purely creating calculated fields, looking for fixed calculation, we can type our own well-known level of detail calculations from Tableau Desktop, or we can go through it in the longer way, which is creating a calculated field, choose a fixed level of detail, which makes sure you can do it in a visual way. It's what you prefer.